Sometimes we say, I don't know why I feel this way. But what we often mean is, I haven't stopped long enough to notice where it began. We feel heavy, angry, anxious, drained, and we search for reasons outside. But what if the source isn't out there? What if the true storm is happening inside, quietly shaped by thoughts we didn't choose and emotions we never questioned? There is a difference between what we feel and what we are. But when emotions rise without explanation, they don't ask for permission. They take over. We confuse the feeling for the truth. We think, if I feel this, it must mean something's wrong with me. But what if the emotion isn't the enemy? What if it's just a messenger, shaped not by reality, but by the way we've been taught to interpret it? Most of our thoughts aren't really ours. They're inherited, automatic, and repetitive, an echo of yesterday playing again today. And when we listen to those thoughts without awareness, our bodies react. That reaction is emotion, not truth, not identity, just the body answering a voice we didn't even realize was speaking. We live under the illusion that we are thinking, when in fact, thinking is happening in us. Like breathing or digestion, most thoughts don't come by conscious choice. They appear uninvited. And yet, these involuntary thoughts create real emotions: fear, anger, shame, and we assume those feelings mean something about who we are. This is how the cycle begins: quiet, invisible, exhausting. Emotions are not born out of the moment. They're born out of meaning, and meaning is created by thought. If you believe you're unsafe, your body will respond with fear. If you believe you failed, it will respond with shame. And so often, what we call emotional instability is really just unconscious belief. That's why we can be triggered by the smallest things, not because of what's happening, but because of what we're believing about what's happening. The thought behind the emotion is often subtle, old, familiar, and unless we pause, we won't even know it's there. But when we pause, when we look gently beneath the surface, we begin to see how thought and emotion dance together, not as enemies, but as patterns, as scripts written by the past. And the more we believe the script, the more we suffer its story. Jesus said, "You will know the truth, and the truth will set you free." That freedom doesn't come from avoiding what we feel. It comes from seeing clearly what we're feeling and what we're thinking behind it. That's where the kingdom begins, not in controlling emotions, but in seeing their roots. There is a kind of healing that doesn't require fixing anything, only understanding. And that understanding begins when we stop trying to escape our emotions and start asking, what thought is feeding this feeling? Not to judge it, but to bring it into the light. When we are possessed by the voice in our head, we confuse its fear for our own. We carry its shame, we react to its warnings. But that voice, that conditioned mind, is not the deepest truth about who we are. You are not the noise of your thoughts. You are not even the wave of your emotions. You are the one who can observe both and choose to respond from a different place, a quieter place, a clearer place, a place where Christ is not distant but centered in your being. And from that place, something begins to shift. Emotions don't vanish, but they soften. Thoughts don't stop, but they lose their grip. And what rises in the silence is not emptiness, but presence. Most of the pain we carry isn't about what's happening. It's about what we believe that moment means. And in that space between thought and feeling, there is power. The power to see, the power to return, the power to no longer be defined by what moves through us. So the real question is not, how do I stop feeling this? But can I become still enough to see what's underneath? Because clarity doesn't come from control. It comes from awareness, and awareness begins with presence. Let this be our starting point. Not to fix, not to resist, but to pause, to breathe, to notice, and in that noticing, to finally begin. To understand where emotions come from is to stop drifting through life without seeing. Because emotions don't rise from nowhere. They are born out of meaning, and meaning is formed by thought. The problem is that most of our thoughts are not deliberate. They are repetitive, conditioned, and automatic, which means that many of the emotions we live through aren't responses to life, but reactions to old patterns we forgot we were still carrying. You don't need a traumatic moment to feel overwhelmed. Sometimes it's just a look, a silence, a delay in someone's reply, and suddenly your chest tightens, your mind spirals. But what caused it wasn't that moment. It was what you thought that moment meant. That's the core of it. Emotions arise when your body believes the mind's story, and when the story is unconscious, the emotion feels unmanageable. We spend years trying to manage feelings, sadness, anger, fear, without ever looking underneath. And underneath, there's almost always a thought we've been living with as if it were truth. Something like, I'm not enough, I will be abandoned, I have to control this or I'll be hurt. These thoughts become the script. The emotion? Just the soundtrack that plays along with it. What keeps us trapped is that we don't question the voice. We react to what it says as if it were reality. But thought is not truth. It is a lens. And lenses distorts, especially when they've been shaped by fear, rejection, or pain. Jesus knew this. That's why so much of his teaching was about vision, about how we see. The eye is the lamp of the body, he said. If your eyes are healthy, your whole body will be full of light. We think we feel our circumstances, but we are really feeling our interpretations. And those interpretations come from thoughts we didn't consciously choose. That's why two people can go through the same event and feel entirely different things. The emotion isn't in the event, it's in the meaning, and that meaning is filtered through the mind. But you are not your mind, and you are not the noise it makes. When you begin to see that thoughts arise without your choosing, you stop identifying with them. And when you stop identifying, you stop being controlled. This is where space begins, the space between what happens and how you feel, the space where Christ speaks. Jesus said in the Gospel of John, chapter 8, verse 32, "You will know the truth, and the truth will set you free." And sometimes that truth is not a grand revelation. Sometimes it's simply realizing, this emotion is not who I am. It's just a signal of what I've been believing. That's where liberation begins. In real life, this shows up in quiet ways. You're tired for no reason, irritable with people you love, numb when you wish you could feel joy. And beneath it all, there's a hidden narrative playing on loop. You may not hear it clearly, but your body does. It responds with tension, with sadness, with anxiety, not because you're broken, but because you've been listening to a voice that isn't yours. Christ never promised we would never feel, but he taught us how to live free even while feeling deeply. His peace wasn't the absence of emotion, it was the presence of truth in the middle of it. When he said in the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 6, verse 34, "Do not worry about tomorrow," he wasn't telling us to be passive. He was pointing to the cost of living in imagined futures. The body cannot hold today and tomorrow at the same time. And that's why we're tired. Not because today is too much, but because we're living today and every possible tomorrow. Emotionally, mentally, spiritually, we are overextended. The soul was never designed to carry the weight of endless what-ifs. It was made to dwell, to rest, to be present with what is, not obsessed with what might be. That's the role of thought in our emotional life. It shapes how we relate to now. And if our thoughts are always pulling us forward or backward, our emotions will never feel grounded. That's why stillness is not luxury, it's survival. In silence, the mind slows down, the stories soften, the body exhales, and something in us comes back to the moment. That's when we begin to feel again, not what we feared, but what's actually true. You can begin to recognize this in yourself when you notice tension rising before anything has even happened. When you anticipate conflict, expect failure, rehearse disappointment, all without a real reason. That's not intuition, that's conditioning, and your body is simply following orders it learned long ago. But just because you learned it doesn't mean you have to live it. Christ did not come to help us manage our pain. He came to offer a new way of seeing. He called it the kingdom of God, and he said it wasn't out there, but within. A new perception, a new presence, a new center from which to live and feel and choose. You may still feel grief, still feel fear, but it will no longer own you. Because now you see it coming, and more than that, you see yourself watching it. That distance is power. That space is freedom. That's the beginning of emotional healing, not the absence of pain, but the return to presence. When emotions arise now, they become invitations. Invitations to notice the thought, to listen to the story, and instead of reacting, you begin to ask, is this really true? Is this what God is saying, or just what my fear has been repeating? That's not detachment, that's discernment, that's spiritual clarity. And maybe that's where we begin, not with trying to feel better, but with learning to see differently, to hear the inner voice with new ears, to meet our emotions with Christ, not just with coping. There is a different way to be here, one that doesn't start with control, but with presence. Let's go there, gently, from the center, with the one who already lives in us, not to push anything away, but to see what we've been carrying, and begin, quietly, to let it go. You don't need to master your emotions to begin living differently. You only need to become present enough to notice what's underneath them. That noticing, gentle, consistent, honest, is where the shift begins. And when Christ is at the center of your awareness, even the emotions you once feared can become sacred teachers, not to be obeyed, but to be seen, held, understood. Start with this. Before reacting to what you feel, ask yourself a quiet question. What thought is giving this emotion its power? It could be a fear, a memory, an expectation. Don't try to fix it, just bring it into light. Jesus never rushed healing. He revealed what was hidden, then stood beside the person as they faced it. Do the same with your own heart. Second, create small moments of stillness in your day, not to control your thoughts, but to create space between them. One breath before answering a message, one pause before responding in frustration. These are not small habits. They are places where eternity breaks into time. The kingdom begins in awareness, not in effort. Third, walk with Christ in your emotional life, not just your spiritual life. Let Him into the places you usually hide, the anxiety before sleep, the shame after a mistake, the spiral of overthinking. His peace was never reserved for the perfect. It was given to the present. "Peace I leave with you," He said. "My peace I give you, not as the world gives." I remember once sitting on the edge of my bed, hands in my lap, unable to explain why I felt so overwhelmed. Nothing dramatic had happened. I just felt like I was drowning in invisible weight. And all I could whisper was, "God, I don't know how to carry this." I didn't receive an answer. I received presence. The sense that I wasn't holding it alone. And that changed everything. Maybe that's what your heart needs right now. Not more doing, not more pressure. Just the quiet remembrance that you are already being held. That you don't need to perform trust. You only need to open to it. Let your soul unclench. Let Christ sit beside you, not as an idea, but as a presence. The one who sees the thought behind the emotion and still calls you His. If this message spoke to you, stay close. There are more videos here, not for consumption, but for communion. This isn't a channel built on noise. It's a space for quiet return, a place where the tired parts of you can come home, slowly, gently, with grace. Subscribe if your heart is asking to keep walking. If something in this way of seeing feels like truth, you don't have to get it right. You don't have to be ready. You just have to be willing to keep coming back, to your breath, to your body, to Christ within you. You were never asked to carry everything. You were asked to abide. And as you do, you'll begin to see that your emotions were never the enemy. They were just invitations to see deeper, to live freer, to return again and again to what is real. May God bless you deeply, and may you walk awake with Christ at the center.